all want to win in life, and I believe we all can win in life. I also believe that success is a choice, and there are no secrets to winning. There are only core principles, habits, and disciplines that leads to success. Yes, some of us have it harder than others, and some of us, well, we have it easier than others. However, it rains on the rich and the poor just the same. It rains on the just and the unjust just the same. It rains on the weak and the strong alike just the same. But it's up to you and it's up to me to rise above the clouds. And there is a better view of success up here. And Principles of Winning is here to help you elevate. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Yes. I am ready for this one. I love doing them live, man. But welcome in. My name is Desmond Clark. I'm the host of Principle of Winning, where we interview highly successful entrepreneurs, executives, athletes, politicians, and entertainers to discern the principles and the disciplines that they have applied in their personal and professional lives to create the mountains of success that they've experienced, so we can continue to develop our own personal and professional success playbooks for our own lives. Hey, before we get started with today's interview, I want to give a shout out to my guy, Bernie Dime. And if you didn't hear his interview last week, you got to go back and you got to go check it out. He is the founder and president and CEO of Perspectives Ltd. And as you know, if you listen to it, he sold it about a year and a half ago, but he's still on there doing wonderful work. I want to thank him for coming on last week. That was a fun and insightful episode. Bernie and his Principles of Winning are sure to inspire the masses. This episode of Principles of Winning is brought to you by Des Clark Speaks. Des Clark Speaks is your preferred keynote speaker and corporate team development specialist. We help executive team leaders create pinnacle team success by establishing principles of winning, the 88 way. If you want to learn more about how we help executives just like you build championship level corporate teams, go to www.desclarkspeaks.com for more information and sign up for our free roundtables. So, hey, we have Kim Laipple coming on right now. She is the SVP, Senior Vice President of Managing Director of Scientific Search. Check this out. Hear me when I say this. She is a $1 million producer. Okay, so that's great, right? She's a $1 million producer, but she does this while managing a team of over 20 recruiters. So I don't know how somebody gets that done. I got to manage 20 people and I'm still a $1 million producer. We're going to figure out how she does that. But she is also a member of Pinnacle Society. Like I said, that's where I met her, which is the top 80 recruiters in the country. And she also sits on the board as secretary. When she's not working, yes, these are her own words, she is a kick-ass Gigi to 4 little grandbabies and has 4 rescue animals that fill her day. So let's bring on Kim. How you doing today, Kim?
Good. Great to be here. Thanks so much.
It made me excited just reading about the 4 kick-ass. You've been a kick-ass Gigi to 4 little grandbabies.
Yes.
Talk to me about that. It seems like that's your pride and joy.
They are. With being such a young mom, which we'll talk about, it's great to have kids in my life again without the thought of raising them, right? I get to actually enjoy it this time around.
Right.
And they keep me young and keep me full of life. And I'm so thankful that they're in my life now at a point where I can get on the jungle gym with them and I can bowl and I can jump on the trampoline and I can do all the fun things with them. And they are just amazing. And it really brings perspective to watch the world through young eyes.
that word perspective. I want to hit that really quick.
Sure.
So you are $1 million producer in an industry where it's tough to be a $1 million
Yeah,
producer.
it is. Yeah, for sure.
You're doing that with managing 20 people. So
Yeah.
I can just imagine what your days are like.
Yeah.
So do those grandkids give you that I get to
Yeah.
get away from all of this and just be Kim, be
Simple.
grandmother,
Yeah.
and kind of a stress relief because I know you got a lot of stresses at work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think they force me to get out of my head and play and enjoy the simple things in life, like an ice cream cone or a sunny day or swim in the pool or whatever those things are that I do with them, going to the movies, all of those things that I may spend that time working if it wasn't for them. So they get me out of that zone and allow me to really enjoy what I've worked so hard for.
We're going to get into the principles, the disciplines, the habits,
Sure,
but I'm so interested because it seems
sure.
like you light up when you talk about your grandkids.
I
Um,
do.
when you define success,
Mhm.
how do you or where do you place being grandmother in your definition of being successful?
I would say it's at the top. Being a grandmother and where I'm at in my career are very much aligned. I would say that's kind of the peak of my success was to be able to not only be a grandmother, but do for my grandkids what I couldn't for my kids, uh,
Mm.
and enjoy them and not feel as though, I don't know how I'm going to be able to participate in their life or put away money for their college or do things that I never could before. So it's almost like a fresh experience at parenthood without the obligation piece of it.
So you've mentioned a couple times being a parent, and
Hmm.
it seems to me, and I know this a little bit from the stories that we shared, that
Sure.
being a parent was a struggle for you.
Yeah.
Tell tell us, go back to those times and let's start from there and tell us about those early struggles of becoming a young parent and what the difficulties were back then.
Yeah. So I became a mom at 18. Right out of high school, I was in a very tumultuous and unhealthy situation. Um, I'm a survivor in many ways from that aspect, as far as domestic situations in a home. And I had to leave
Mm.
knowing that I had no way to support my kids. I was so young. I was a kid. I didn't know what I was doing. And I had no education at that point. And from there, obviously, I had to make some very tough decisions. And, like we've talked about, kind of bootstrap myself the rest of the way, figure out what that was going to look like and what I was going to accept as my lot in life. Was this it? Or how was I going to handle my life? And what could I control and what I couldn't?
You said kids, plural.
Two girls. They're within a year of each other.
Okay, so your first kid was at 18, second kid
And then
was
19.
19, 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you say no education, did you finish
Correct.
high school?
I did finish high school at that point. Yeah. I just didn't
Okay.
have any advanced education. I'd finished high school. I was working in an office setting inside of a wholesale bagel company. And I had no benefits. I had nothing. So it was pretty rough at that point.
Take me there. And
Yeah.
you said it was pretty rough. When you were in this time, 19, 20,
Hmm.
trying to figure out, tell me the mindset. Tell me what was your thought process at that time before you eventually started to figure things out, which we're going to get to.
Sure.
What was your mindset at that point? How did you look at life?
I knew that that was not going to be my story, the way that my life was going. I think that I had the girls so that I would have a reason to leave. I believe that I loved them more than I loved me at that point in my life. And it gave me the strength or the fortitude to walk away and know that I was walking into the unknown. At that point in my life, it was definitely hand to mouth at best. It was a lot of really rough months and years. But I think by looking at that and knowing that I didn't want that for them was where my initial motivation came from. And I think I had mentioned this to you. Someone had said to me when I was 18 and pregnant, they said to me, well, now you're never going to go to college.
Right.
And there is one way to fuel me, and it's to tell me I can't do something. So at that point, I knew that I not only would figure it out, but I would make sure that they saw my hustle so that they always knew that there was anything was possible in their lives that they set their mind to.
Now, I know who that person was, and you didn't mention that person. So until you mention, I'm going to keep it out. But that
Thank
person was
you.
somebody that was very close to you.
Yes.
That had a lot of influence
Very
on
much
you.
so. Very much so.
That had to be very, very tough for you to hear that from that person, where, you would think that that person would be someone that would be encouraging you to get out of that situation.
Correct. And in fairness, at that time, that person, was doing the best that they could and was the person that I looked up to most in the world, and really did want what was best for me. They did not have a full picture of the situation I was in. I kept a lot of that private out of sheer embarrassment for a very long time. But I believe that person believed that that was how you motivated people, that, I'm Gen X. I mean, we didn't get a pat on the back or don't worry, it'll be okay. That just wasn't the way we were raised.
Got a kick in the ass.
Yeah. So I took the kick and I ran with it. So I don't begrudge anyone for that. I think as parents, as people that are mentors to others, we say what we say for the right reasons, for the most part. And I don't think it was malicious. I think it was just a sadness that created that statement.
Right. So that person meant well. It just didn't come out the right way.
Correct.
It came out more in a hurtful way than a helpful way. But you were able to take that, package that, turn it into motivation.
So, for sure.
You said you knew at some point that this was not going to be your story.
Yes.
What was that point, and what gave you the confidence that wasn't going to be your story?
So I think I always knew that it wasn't going to be my story. I think there was something in me that wanted more. As I was young and I was in high school, I always kind of dreamed of being the girl in the suit in New York City, living her best life, and never planned on having a family. Never, that wasn't in my line of sight. I wanted to break through for women. I wanted to be an executive. I wanted to make decisions and do all of those things that you think are so cool when you're in high school. And so for me, I always knew that piece. But then when I was in the situation I was in, I think the grind of working so hard and not seeing any results because of it, still being hand to mouth, still not being able to pay the utilities, not being able to buy a home, things like that. It just got to a point where I just said, enough is enough, and I need to figure out a different way. And then I started trying things to figure that out. And I think that, you don't know until you know, right? You don't know what you don't know. And until you start figuring things out, you really don't know how to get to the end. But, in what we've discussed and in my principles of winning, I knew that one of my principles was there was no failure. It was just the next step to the right direction. So, yeah.
No, I was just going to say thank you for segueing for me,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's what I
absolutely.
want to do right now. At some point, like you said, enough was enough.
Hmm.
And I think for a lot of people who had to start off with less than, me
Yeah.
being one of those people, there was some point where you say, all right, that's enough. And you start to develop certain characteristics, certain disciplines,
Hmm.
principles, habits, whatever you want to call those things. I call
Yeah.
them principles for myself. What were those principles that, hey, when you said, okay, I got to figure this out,
Yeah.
what were those one, two, three, four, five principles that you developed to start to help you turn that corner?
Yeah. I would say one of them is that failure is not in my vocabulary. Failure is an opportunity for me. If you don't fall, you don't get the opportunity to get back up. So I always look at things from that perspective. I would also say that for me, optimism is one of my principles, that we have a choice every day when we wake up how we're going to look at things. And two things can be true simultaneously. Something can
Mhm.
really suck, and it can also be an opportunity. And I choose the opportunistic side of things every day. I also think that we can't necessarily be masters of many things, but I do think that anything worth doing is worth doing right. It's worth doing to the best of your ability. If I'm going to take the time to do it, I'm going to be as best as I can at it.
Yeah.
There's no reason to do things halfway for me. It's not fulfilling. And then I think improvement is, I live my life where there is no end. There is no end to my learning. There is no end to my development. There is no end to my growth. I challenge myself each and every day in some way, even if it's something so small that keeps me feeling, alive in everything that I do.
Hmm. I love all of these.
Thank you.
Failure is an opportunity.
It
Failure is
is.
not in your vocabulary. Optimism. And I love the way that you put that. Two things could be true at the same time. This can
Yes.
suck, but it also can be an opportunity.
Hmm.
Um, Anything worth doing is worth doing well and doing the
Yes.
right way. So there's a standard there. I put out a post just
Yes.
today saying, challenging people and asking them, do you have a standard for yourself? And
Yes.
obviously, there's a standard for you because you want to do things at a certain level all the time. And improvement, there's no end.
Yes.
There's no end game.
Yeah.
There's no end
Yeah.
game. Take me back to the optimism. And here's where I want to go
Hmm.
here because um, a lot of times people see the obstacle, right? Say,
Yeah.
oh man, I have to do X, Y, and Z. And usually that obstacle is a moat around the
Yeah.
opportunity. So, yes, there's a moat there, but there's a castle on the other side of that moat.
Hmm.
You just got to figure out how to get through the moat, past the moat, all the dangers
Yeah.
in the moat to get to the castle.
Right.
Tell me, how did you develop that thought process of, hey, I'm gonna take the optimism side and the fact that you understand that two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah, I think for me, there's a couple things that came into play there. One, I am an incredibly analytical creature. I love to problem solve. So from that perspective, you put a moat and I'm going to figure out how to build a bridge. That's part of my
There you
DNA.
go.
I don't think I had, you look for the hammer, pick up a stick, whatever you need to do. So that part, I do think that I have done a tremendous amount of work in something called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is where you reframe the way that you have internal
Mhm.
discussions and dialogue, right? So if anybody, thinks about it, if you're in a car and you see an accident, you automatically think the worst case scenario, right? We're
Mhm.
wired to do that. So you have to actively participate in your own life in a positive way for there to be a positive influence long term. So that's kind of where that two sides to the coin come from is, that I can say I was hand to mouth, I was getting food at a food bank, I couldn't pay my bills. That is true, but it's also true that I have a master's degree and that I have a very good life now. And those two can be juxtaposed, but they can also be existing at the same time, meaning that, I can choose to say one thing, but one of the funny things that I always joke about is when I came here to interview 15 years ago, we did personality assessments. I think it was the DISC assessment at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it said I was too optimistic to be a good recruiter. But he took a chance on me anyway, he said. So I think he's happy he did. But yeah, I think deciding that I'm going to see the sunshine through the clouds every day and actively doing the activities that bring me joy, whether it's a walk in the woods, whether it's watching my dogs play, whether it's spending time with my grandkids, and filling my cup with things that show me those things can be true.
Active and intentional.
Very much so.
That's what I right at the end. That's what came through, being active and being intentional for your own life. And also the whole reframing. I have the thought process of words actually frame our reality, right?
Absolutely.
We think with words, and that's one of the reasons why, if you're not educated and you can't read, you typically have a harder time in life because your thought processes, and this is, I don't know if this is scientific. This is just what I think. Because we think in terms of words, like you look over there, you say that's a green tree. That's right. What you think. And then when you get to more advanced things, if you don't have the words to think through it, you struggle. And then now you act out of emotion and you act out of reaction, then thought process.
That's great to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. And getting back to the point of reframing, like everything that you say puts a frame around whatever it is so if I look at you and I say, hey, Kim is a white woman that wears glasses and she's a grandparent. So I just put a frame around who you are, right?
Right.
And you do that with everything that you think about, especially when you say it out of your mouth. If you look at something and say, man, that's such a bad thing that you're putting a frame around it, and it really messes with your emotions one way or another.
Yeah.
So that's when I heard reframe, that's what I started to think about. Improvement. There's no end. Like that's not a young person's personality. That's not what we think when we're 20, 21.
Yeah.
Where did that one come from? What experience did you go through to develop that?
So I had kind of a catalyst experience about 8 years ago. And so, it was definitely not when I was younger. You're not even thinking that far out, I remember thinking my age was old. So, and I don't feel old at all. So, I had a catalyst event. I was in a relationship, and again, not my strong suit on that side of my life, but I realized that there were things that were happening in my life personally that were happening over and over again. And there has to be a time of reflection if you want to be truly at peace and successful, in my opinion, where you take a hard look in the mirror, and the only consistent in all of those situations was me. And I needed to accept that I was making some bad choices, and I needed to figure out why I was making those choices, whether it was personally, professionally. I was doing okay at work then, but I wasn't doing what I'm doing now.
Right.
And I was in my own way. I had a lot of unhealed parts of myself, as many of us do. And I made a decision at that point that if I was going to continue to do what I was doing, that nothing would ever be different. And I was successful, but I wasn't happy. And I thought, like I think many people do, I've noticed this when I discuss things with people, that people think when you get to a certain point, whether it's I have $20,000 in the bank, or I have this title, or I bought a house, or whatever those things are. You're going to magically be happy.
All
And
right.
that just doesn't work. You're
No.
not going to magically be anything. So I realized that there was something else that was causing me to be unhappy. And in that, I did a lot of self-reflection and realized that I was making choices out of a place of fear and inadequacy. And I was walking the walk, but I wasn't living in it. I wasn't being authentic to who I was. I wasn't myself in those occasions. I was leading through force. I was doing a lot of things from a place of fear, although to the outside, I looked very confident. I looked very arrogant. I looked like I knew what I was doing, and I had no clue. I literally had no idea what I was doing. So I took a long time and really did a lot of professional growth. And again, I don't believe in doing anything part of the way. So, I think when I decided that, I went deep, and I was
Okay.
very honest with myself. And I said, here is where you don't feel good about yourself. Here are areas for improvement. What does that look like to you? What does your happiness really look like? And it's not about a bank account. It's not about a home. It's not about a car. It's about feeling a sense of gratitude and peace. For me, for other people, it could be all
Maybe
those
that.
things. And
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong, the ride's a lot easier when you can pay your utilities. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
and buy a steak. Like
And
it's
you
not.
know that personally.
Yeah, I sure do. I had one of my kids tell me recently that she didn't know how to eat steak until she was older because
Mm,
we didn't have it. And I was like, yeah, well, because I couldn't afford it. We couldn't
yeah.
buy steak when you were a kid. I was lucky to buy hamburger. So, it's much easier to have those things. And I do try to really practice gratitude around the ability to care for myself and others around me in a way that I never could before. But I did a lot of self reflection. I put the work in with examining how I was showing up for others. How was I authentically feeling? Where were those feelings coming from? And how could I improve on me as a human being and make sure that when I left people, I was leaving them better than when I met them?
Mm-hmm. A whole lot there to unpack, man. We can stay
Yeah,
here
right.
for 3 hours. Now, I know we don't have 3 hours, but I wrote a whole lot of notes. So the one thing that stands out is that you took accountability, right, for
Yes.
yourself. You didn't blame it. You said earlier you had a lot of situations that you could have blamed on other people,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But then I hear you say, hey, I had to look at myself and be honest, and you found yourself making the same decisions, right?
Yes.
And you had to break out of those decisions. One of the things that I think is hard for people to do is to be honest with themselves.
Yeah.
You alluded to this. You said that you started doing some professional.
Yes.
Uh, so was that counseling, and
Yes.
did that help you to start to be honest with yourself? Because even now with myself, I try to be as real with myself as I can, but
Yeah.
sometimes I still find myself lying to myself.
Of course you
Yeah.
do. Yeah. Yes. So I see a therapist, I see a psychologist every Monday. And it took probably like, I think I went through six at that point in time. And if anybody decides to go on some kind of journey of being truly accountable to yourself and the people that you touch, um, it's just like anything else. You're not going to find, you don't try on one shoe and that's the only shoe you ever buy. You have to figure out what works for you. And I realized after meeting with several therapists that I needed somebody that wasn't going to be too academic in nature. I needed them to challenge me. I chose a man as my therapist. And I needed that perspective. I needed to understand the way men think differently than women and why sometimes that communication is difficult for me. And I needed somebody that was going to not just help me, but give me the understanding of the why behind it and make it make sense to me. When things make sense for me, it's easier for me to kind of grab onto them if I have context. I see a personal trainer now, and one of the things I'm constantly saying to him is, show me the muscle I should feel it in. How should that movement look? Is my form right? All the little things that go,
Right.
and by no means am I like bodybuilding or anything, but when I understand
Right.
it, I can repeat it. I can do it more. I can work to be the best at that. So yeah, I think that the therapy portion, I think, is critical. And I would say that it's not that I'm on a soapbox about therapy as much as it is that I think we all deserve an hour a week with an unbiased opinion where we can offload what we're experiencing. And like you said, put the right frame around those experiences. And if not, if you ask your friends and your family, they're gonna buy into your shit. I mean, they're gonna say, "Oh, I can't believe she did that. Of course you acted the way you did." Where
Oh,
I
no,
can
it's
go,
okay.
yeah, or it's okay, it'll
It's
get better.
perfectly
Yeah,
normal. Yeah.
you're perfect. You don't need to do anything different.
Exactly.
But when I go in there and he'll say to me, well, give me a grade of how you handled that situation, A, B, C, and I'll say, well, I'll give myself a B plus. I think I did pretty good. And he goes, no, I'd say a D minus. And I'm like,
You
damn,
just walk.
really? Like, what did I do wrong? And when he tells me things that I would never take from a situation where I think I'm growing, and he'll point out where I still have the work to do, and that motivates me tremendously.
Through this process, what did you discover that you feared? And then
Yeah.
what was the breakthrough, and how did that help you to get to where you're at now?
So the breakthrough for me, we're getting deep here, is I did things in order for people to like me. I was afraid that if I didn't have the answers, that the only value I brought was my intelligence. So if I couldn't answer something, that I no longer had value. If I
Mm,
wasn't doing a good job in something, why else would someone want to be around me if it wasn't to benefit them? I didn't
mm,
believe that I added value as a human being. I believe that the value is in my production or my output. And that left me trying to be someone I wasn't in every situation. There's an old movie called The Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts. And there's a scene in it where she ate eggs, however, the guy she was with wanted their eggs, right? And at the end of the movie, she's finding out about herself, and somebody asked her, how do you want your eggs? And she's like, honestly, I don't even know. And that felt so real to me when I saw that. It was like, I don't know who I am if I just think of what I want and not what others want from me. And so I started there. What do I like to do? What brings me happiness? What are my strengths? What are areas that I know I'm not good at and I'm okay with that? Where can I ask for help and learn from others and not be intimidated by someone being able to teach me something? Is it okay to be vulnerable around people? And the answer is yeah, it's okay to
yeah.
just be human. And the people that are supposed to be my people will love me in all my flaws, in my best moments, and in my worst. And I have such a deeper connection with the people that I choose to have in my life now than I ever thought was possible for me.
Professionally, once you discovered this about yourself, what was that first major victory professionally?
Yeah. It was having people want to learn from me instead of being intimidated by me. Um, it was having a staff want to replicate what I was doing and ask for help and guidance instead of following blindly because I told them to do it.
Mhm.
I remember the first time somebody said, "You're the best boss I've ever had." And I was like, wow, like that's success right there. And he
Yeah.
doesn't work here anymore. And he still messages me probably once every 6 months about his career. And to know that I impacted him in some way and heard him in a way that he hadn't been heard,
Mhm.
is incredibly, incredibly meaningful to me.
Yeah, those type of things. I got to hang out with my brother. I got a brother that's 12 years younger than me. I'm the next to him. We got two older brothers, but
Okay.
we went and hung out. And as we were hanging out, it was my youngest brother, and then not my oldest brother, but next to oldest brother. We were all hanging out, and there were a bunch of people that came to where we were at, was at a cigar bar, and about 8 people
Mhm.
that I had influenced over time all came up and they said, you know what, man, I appreciate you for what you did. This was 20 years ago. And all these men are grown men now. Some of them were on the streets. One of them was homeless coming out of high school. And all of these guys are successful. One owns a restaurant. One still has his music career. And that's how I touched all these guys, because I used to do music and have a studio back in my hometown. And they said the
Amazing.
same thing to my older brother too, because he managed my studio. When I was driving home that night, I called my wife, and she was like, "Well, because I don't go out that much." And she
Right.
said, "Did you enjoy yourself?" I was like, "Yeah, I really did enjoy myself." And I'm sitting with a sense of pride driving back home, because
Yeah.
how so many people came up and was like, man, they were happy to see me, because I'm like a unicorn. I don't hang out late.
Right,
I'm always
right.
out late. And then just saying, we appreciate you for what you did, 20, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So for me, and you just said it for you,
Yeah.
that's definitely part of success for me. And it's written in my statement of, hey, my goal is to help people live the best lives that they can through any resource, expertise that I have.
Yeah.
So yeah. So now that you've started to move up the ladder a little bit, tell me
Mhm.
about how some of these other principles help shape you
Mhm.
as this $1 million producer. Before we get into you managing people, now
Sure.
let's talk about your work, your actual
Yeah.
work.
My
How
love. Yeah.
because, yeah, because
Love it.
this is not an easy job being a recruiter, right?
No.
It's
No.
it's sales, and in sales,
Mhm.
most of the
It's
time you're
rough.
being told no. So how do these principles help you become that $1 million
Yeah.
producer that you are?
It's funny that you say that, because one of the very first things that I was worried about 8 years ago, when I started to really reflect on myself, was that if I fixed what was broken in me, was I going to be good at my job? Or was what was broken in me what made me good at my job? And
Mm,
I was very terrified of that, because I was chasing love, I was chasing belonging, I was chasing recognition, that I was chasing all of those things in my job, which kept me motivated and moving. If somebody said no, that was one closer to a yes. Little did I realize that by fixing me and showing up as my authentic self to my clients and my candidates, I have reached magnitudes that I didn't think were possible. I sat in front of my boss, the owner of the company, probably around that same time, and I was billing like 5 to 600K, which is a great living, and
yeah.
said, I want to bill $1 million, and I can't do that the way that we're set up. And he said, well, what do you need? And I said, well, I need the ability to change some things. Like, there's certain things that we need to do here. And he said, show me that you can make money doing what you think, and then we'll talk. So before I implemented things as a company, I was doing them, and testing and doing that fall down, get up
Right.
thing, and being willing to take my work and throw it in the trash when it didn't work, and things like that. I think because I care about my clients and about the impact I have on those companies, also my desire to kind of almost live an entrepreneurial life through my clients, because it's always changing and stimulating me in different ways. And there's never an end to the learning process. I was able to show up for my clients and be honest with them about what was going on, which I couldn't do before. So by being able to say to a company, listen, I can find you this person, but here's the deal breakers right now. What can we move on? How about we bend here? What are your thoughts on this? Giving them options. I became a consultant instead of just a yes, let me do that for you. And
Or
love.
to take.
Yeah, exactly. We
Yeah.
always say, we don't check off a checklist here. We don't just, there's not a one size fits all. And
Hmm.
you know, just like we were saying, where, things can be true on both sides. Our job can be really hard, and it is really hard. But the cool part about my job is that no one's saying, no matter how hard you work, this is all you're going to make. So because I have the ability to achieve certain things by putting in additional effort, it's so well aligned with my personality and my drive, because there's never an end to the job. So there's never an end to me growing. So basically, I looked at everything and knew that there were going to need to be things that were automated, that were production items. One of the women that work here, that's my best friend, her name's Michelle. She said, I became the Henry Ford of recruitment. I created
The assembly line.
Yeah,
The process. Yeah.
And there are things that you can do over and over again. So I became an expert at recruiting instead of trying to be good at all the things that we do. I became an expert at what we do and built from there so that I could have a desk that had reoccurring revenue built into it.
So this is personal, but it helped you in your professional relationship. You said you were chasing love and you were chasing recognition. I wrote in my book, Principles of Winning, that and I think in my book I said I don't care if people like me. That's a lie.
Yeah, of course
I
it
do.
is.
Yeah. Of course, I want people to like me. Everybody wants people to like them.
Of course.
But if people don't like me, I'm okay with that. That's how I should say it. And here's why. Is because I'm more focused on making myself a person that can be liked, that should be liked, that has enough within me that people should like me, right?
Yes.
Whether they do or not, I can't worry about that. Recognition wise, I'm not necessarily worried about the recognition. I'm doing the things that I have to do that's worthy of recognition. Whether it come,
there you go. Yep.
Whether it come or not, that's not something that I should be focused on. And it all rolls up to, for me, especially on the work side, and what I call the process of greatness.
Yeah.
Greatness is one of those things that is an outside validation. You don't have too many people walking around, oh man, I'm great. I'm just so great at it.
Right.
Walking around those people, maybe you
I don't
need
want those people.
That process is executing the details in excellence consistently over time. You can take that in your personal life. You can take that in your professional life. And if you have that mindset like you do, and you said this in other ways, you want to execute the details in excellence consistently. Yes. And like you said, there is no end. So you're going to do it over time. That's what makes you great. And that's what makes it now where you're not chasing love and you're not chasing recognition. You're attracting it.
Yeah. And that is very true. Like, you don't realize it at first. When you first start feeling good, things just all of a sudden you're like, wait, this is the life that I dreamt of. This is the peace and happiness and relationships. Like Pinnacle is a perfect example. I mean, I was terrified of going into that room, and you met all of us.
Right? Do I belong here?
Yeah, and one of the things that I learned was it's not did I belong there? That's exactly where I was supposed to be. And I am so grateful for the people at Pinnacle. And you met us, we're just people. And I imagined I was going to walk in the room and feel this big around all of these people. And now knowing I add value to them too is so meaningful to me. But yeah, I mean, that greatness that you're looking for, like you said, it's not that I don't want people to like me, of course. What I've learned now is there are people that will know me and trust me and love me because of who I am. And there are people that won't, and that is not a reflection of me. That's their choice. That's their preference. That's their reflection. And I thought if I just did whatever somebody else wanted, then that would make it work, so to speak. And nobody wants to be around somebody that just does exactly what they want all the time. That's how you get walked on.
Right.
That doesn't give you individuality or opinions, but constant work in progress. And we have a guy here that did one of our morning trainings, and he was a soccer coach professionally before he came into recruiting. And he talked a lot about the compound effect and that
Which is a
10%.
book. Which is a
Yeah.
book.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is a book, and I highly recommend it. And it's similar to the habits of highly successful people. And there's a couple others that kind of work off that same principle.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to go from 0 to 60. I'm going to go from 0 to 1 to 1.5 to 2, and I'm going to work my way up. So by getting a little bit better or a little bit stronger at certain activities every day, the next thing you know, you turn around and you've created something new and amazing for yourself.
Absolutely. What comes first?
Mm-hmm.
The confidence that you
Mm-hmm.
should be in the room, or the work that you've done
Mm-hmm.
to gain the confidence? So let
Mm-hmm.
me ask that a different way. Do you first have to be confident, or is it more so do the work and then the confidence will come?
I think the confidence comes, and I don't think it's always there. I think one of the things I've learned are there are days where I feel like I was very confident in my decisions or my actions or whatever the case may be, and then I can have 2 or 3 days in a row where I'm just like, man, I just did not do anything that I should have done today. Like I made all the wrong decisions. But I think what I lean into when I'm feeling that way is I go back to those principles where I say to myself, okay, so today you consider yourself a failure. You gave yourself an F on today. But what opportunities did that open? What can you learn from those things? How can you better yourself based on that? So I would say the actions come, the confidence comes and goes.
Mm.
And you have to know that everything in our life is going to impact us. But if I'm always feeling confident, I'm not getting out of my comfort zone and I'm not living into
Very good
that
point.
thing, right? Then I'm no longer continuing my journey. I've
Mhm.
stopped. So
Right.
I embrace the discomfort. In my therapy, we call it the icky feeling. When you're feeling that, like I don't want to do this. This is scary. Then I know I'm growing and I'm expanding who I am as an individual. So I would say the confidence goes back and forth, but the actions have to be there on a consistent basis.
So now you've become this person that you are now,
Hmm.
through all the different trials and tribulations and different experiences. How
Yeah.
do you now take those principles? Because you manage 20 people. And how do you take those principles and help those 20 people be the best at what they do personally and professionally?
Yeah. So for a long time, that was incredibly daunting to me to know that eventually I wouldn't be here, and that somebody else would be doing what I did. And I was very intimidated by that. Um, Now, because I have a sense of self worth and an impact, I know that if I'm training people to do things in a way that will give them the life that I've given myself, that
Hmm.
the business will continue. I have left my mark, I guess, in some way. So when I work with individuals, one of the things that I'm very passionate about is knowing that there's not a one size fits all. I think that, from a very Gen X perspective, it used to be there is one size fits all.
Hmm.
And now it's not that way. I also, though, am very careful not to lean too much the other direction to the participation era. So there has to be some give and take. So I believe in setting some basic expectations that I don't stray from. There are certain minimums that people are required. There's certain work production that is required of you for coming here and taking a paycheck, right? And then there's people that want more, like I did, that crave to be developed. And those individuals, it's important to know what's success or what matters to them, and then work toward fulfilling that. And what I mean by that is we have support staff here. So we have a couple support people, and each one of them, everybody else in the company is motivated by money. We're salespeople. That's what we do. I had never managed people that weren't motivated by commission. So what do you do with that? Like, how do I train you? I can't wrap my head around it. So listening to them and what feels good to them, what brings them joy, what fulfills their day, and then finding ways to capitalize on that is a win-win. And it's harder to manage that way. It's harder to tailor the way that you lead. But if I did the same thing across the board, I wouldn't have the loyalty and commitment and tenure that we have, because people are constantly getting what they need here instead of having to look outside the doors to find that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a very tailored approach.
Why is it harder for you to manage the non-money driven people?
Yeah, because I am driven by money. So in my mind, well, I'm driven by the success that brings the money. I want to do well. I want to make the placements. Some people just want to go to their job and then go home, and they don't want to think about work any other time. I am so passionate about what I do. I know that this is what I was meant to do with my life. I don't question that ever. I don't ever wonder if this is the career that I was meant to be in, because I love it so much. So when somebody else is kind of lukewarm on just coming in and doing their job, I'm like, well, how do you motivate someone like that? Or if the other part is this isn't their last stop, some of them.
Right.
And I have to be okay with knowing that if I can't give them what they want, I still want what's best for them. And I'm okay helping them transition to somewhere else. I'm okay with having those difficult conversations, writing a letter of recommendation for one of my employees to attend a master's program that would take her completely out of my industry. And knowing that she feels good about coming to me and asking me, knowing that means she's not going to be here. That's a reward too, that she feels comfortable enough with me. So I just think when it's people that don't think the same way we do, it's harder for me to put myself in their shoes and understand it from their perspective, but it also helps me grow at the same time.
And you asked a rhetorical question in there. How do I motivate someone like that? So I want to hear the answer. So
sure.
I'm coming with scientific, and I want to be in the search industry. I have talent. I have some drive, but now, a year and a half into it, I'm on your team. I'm doing well, but I'm not doing as well as you think I can be doing. Now I'm kind of coasting because I hit that comfortable state. What do you do? What kind of conversation do you have with me? How do you manage me up to produce more?
You said something so critical in there that I have to at least weekly remind myself. My view of your potential is not your potential. Okay. One of the things I've learned is that when we're all born, we all are kind of born with our own playbook. And this will be a good reference because it's football. So we're all born with our own playbook, right? And your playbook isn't the same as mine. So just because I see more for you doesn't mean your playbook shows you that. Doesn't mean that you want that. It is very difficult when you see such talent in someone and they don't want it. They don't want to expand on that. And then you get frustrated, and then you're frustrating them, and nobody's winning at that point, right? It's like, why won't you just put in a little bit more time? Why won't you just put more effort? And I'm sure you saw that in football. We're raw talent on the field and guys going out and partying, throwing it all away, whatever it was. So one of the things I constantly do is check in with what they consider success. And if they're producing and they're happy, I'm not messing with it. I'm not going to fix what's not broken.
Let me throw you another curveball in there because you're hitting me right in the heart. Like I
Yeah.
struggle with this because I
Yeah, it's
want to see
hard.
everybody be successful, and I
Yeah.
get really passionate about it, especially when it's
Yeah.
family or somebody who like I love on
Yeah.
like they're my people, they're close to me. But
Yeah.
okay, so you have that conversation with them,
Yeah.
and they are saying that they want more,
Yep.
but
Yep.
they're not taking the push, or they're not the actions are not
Yeah.
matching
What
what
their
they're.
words are saying. Yeah.
What then? Because now
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you. Let me frame this for you.
Okay.
I'm asking this for me because that's what I struggle with.
Yeah, I do too. And I think anybody that has no limit always struggles with people that give themselves limits, right? So I often go to, there's an image that you can Google, and if you Google like iceberg success, I think we'll bring it up. And there's an
Mhm.
iceberg, and it shows all the people successful at the top, and then it shows all the hard work under the water, right? And people want success. People want a BMW. People want a big house. Do they want to do the work to get it? No, not always. So I go through different scenarios with them and say, okay, well, if you could have that vacation that you just described, like your dream this year, success would be going to Hawaii for 2 weeks. What are you willing to do to go to Hawaii? And then I work my way backwards. So, okay, are you willing to make 100 extra calls a week? No, I'm not doing that. Okay, are you willing to learn one new skill per month? No. Okay, well, do you want to go to Hawaii? Well, yeah. Do you want to do the work to go to Hawaii? No. Okay, how about I get you pictures of Hawaii and you can look at those while you don't go? I kind of give them different scenarios that will get them there, but ultimately, we can only lead the horse to water. We can give people the tools to succeed. I do try to figure out ways that resonate with that particular person, whether it's, a written form that, I have some people here who love paper still. They love to write everything down. I do everything electronically. I'm not going to require one or the other. But I am going to require that you have X, Y, and Z in front of you to do your job. So if somebody's all paper driven, maybe I create something for them that's a little bit different from a to-do list standpoint, where they have the ability to organize themselves a little bit differently than others. And that works for their mindset. Checking in with them, do you feel as though you did your best work this week? What did you do well? What didn't you do well? What would you like to do differently? But people show you more than they tell you what they want, and
Right.
you have to believe them.
Right. You said something, and I wrote it. It was one of my notes right here. Want to, willing to, and like as soon as I wrote it, you started
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
people want to have success,
Mm-hmm.
but not everybody is willing to do what it takes to have
Mm-hmm.
success. And that's where you got certain people here, got certain people here, and
Yeah.
success is our arbitrary word, right?
Sure.
So how we view success, somebody else may say, okay, that's
Yeah.
not success to me. Like what we view as success and what Bill Gates view as success.
Very different. Yeah.
Right. So, but being willing to do what you need to do to gain the success that you picture is the thing that determines it. I truly
Yeah.
believe that.
I agree.
Is there something that I miss out on? Anything that, hey,
Yeah.
before we go, I would love to leave this last point.
Yeah. I told you a little bit about this when we were talking before. I think that there are times in our life where we do things or we prepare for things that we don't even know we're preparing for, right? And I would welcome people to challenge yourself when it's easier to do that. Last year, I suffered a very severe injury, and I don't know that I could have made it through that injury. As I mentioned to you, I broke my leg, my foot. I
I,
was
I met you. You was on a scooter.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. I was on the scooter. Yeah. So, and in that moment, I was alone. I was hurt. I needed an ambulance. And I knew that I could rely on myself to get out of that situation because I knew that I didn't have quit. I knew I didn't have it in me. And if I hadn't developed the skills, I don't know how I would have responded in that situation. I don't think anybody does. But that was the easy part. What came after that was the surrounding myself with people that truly supported and loved me. And I learned through that experience that it is okay to count on others. And I didn't have a choice. I physically couldn't move. I was in more pain than I ever want anyone to ever experience, but I had to count on other people. And I could not have done that had I not done the work to know that I had worth, even when I couldn't work. And by doing that, I surrounded myself with a group of people that willingly, without question, cared for me and loved me through one of the most difficult times of my life and learning how to walk again. And still to this day, it's 11 months later and I'm still healing. And, I think by challenging yourself all the time, you may be preparing for something that's in your future. And if you don't do it now, how will you handle those obstacles as they come up? So while you have the ability to make yourself, quote unquote, stronger from a personal standpoint, take advantage of that because there are going to be times where you need to rely on that strength to get through.
Absolutely. Something that I'm trying to teach my son as we get
It's
up
the
at
best.
6 o'clock in the morning and go work out. It's like, we're not just working out just to come here and work out. Say, son, the world don't care nothing about you.
No.
We're going to keep going with or without you. And
Yes.
there's going to be a lot of hard times that's going to come. He's 12 and I'm trying to teach him this now. I was like,
Yeah.
we come to the gym in the morning because we have to make ourselves get up. We have to make ourselves come in here and make our exterior hard and get strong. So when the time comes when we need this mentally and physically, we can be strong and we can overcome whatever it is. This is just an exercise for that. And I know right now he's 12 and he's like, Dad, shut up.
Yeah, shut up. Let me play my video games.
Right now, you're waking me up. But hopefully somewhere down the road, he'll understand it. That's why Dad got me up in the morning. That's why he made me go lift these weights, not just so I can be good in athletics but so I can be good in life. And that's what I try to use that for life. And as I heard your story, the last story when you broke your leg and you had to crawl your way to your phone or else you're just going to be there by yourself, failure was not an option.
Not an option.
That's
Not
one
an
of your
option. Mm-hmm.
You had to have optimism. Yes, two things can be true at the same time. I am in a ton of pain, but I know I can get over there to my phone.
Yep.
Worth doing it right. Hey, I don't know where that one come in that story, but the last one that you're talking about, continuous improvement, there is no end. Like now that you've had that event and now you had to rebuild yourself, you say it's still difficult right now and you're still trying to continue to improve. 3 out of your 4 principles came out at that time. And let's just say the 4th one came out too, because you actually told me this. Your rehab, you attacked it like nothing else. Because you said if you had to do it,
I was going to do it right.
You was going to do it right.
Yeah.
So all of your principles are in play and they're consistent throughout whatever you do. And I appreciate you sharing those principles with us today. Hey, I know people are going to get a lot out of this one. If they didn't get a lot out of this one, they just didn't listen well enough, but they'll listen.
Such a pleasure.
And I appreciate you jumping on and sharing the principles of winning with my audience, with my crowd.
Thank you so much for having me.